You're not waiting. You're rebuilding your power. That's the first truth you need to hold on to during no contact. Because too often, people mistake no contact for a waiting game. They sit by their phone, counting the days, hoping for a message, a call, a sign. But let me tell you something. You are not on pause. You are not sitting on a bench waiting for someone to pick you back up and reinsert you into their life. You're in motion feist, even when it doesn't feel like it. See, what happens after a breakup or emotional separation is that we go through withdrawal. It's chemical, emotional, physical. We've conditioned ourselves to feel good when we hear from that person, when we get their attention, when we're in their presence. So the silence feels unnatural, almost unbearable. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. It means you're being given a chance to step back into your own life, to stop chasing closure from someone else and start giving clarity to yourself. No contact isn't about them. It's not a punishment, and it's not a strategy to win someone back. It's a boundary. It's you drawing a line and saying, I deserve better than confusion, inconsistency, and emotional chaos. It's not passive, it's active. Because every day you choose not to reach out, you're not waiting, you're healing, you're detoxing, you're making space to see the relationship for what it really was, not just what you hoped it could be. But here's the magic most people miss. During no contact, you're not losing love, you're regaining self-worth. You're redirecting all the energy you were pouring into them back into yourself. And that's not selfish, it's essential. Because when we give too much of ourselves to someone else, we slowly disconnect from our own identity. We start to forget who we were before we met them. The version of us that didn't doubt our value. The version that didn't tolerate half-hearted efforts or mixed signals. That version is still there. It's not gone. It's just buried under the noise. It gives you space to reconnect to that deeper voice inside, the one that knows what you truly want and what you're truly worth. That voice gets drowned out when you're constantly checking your phone or interpreting their silence as rejection. It's not rejection, it's redirection. It's the universe giving you the gift of space to realign with yourself. Now, does this mean you won't miss them? Of course not, you will. You'll miss the connection, the comfort, the idea of what it could have been. But missing someone doesn't mean you should go back. Missing someone doesn't mean they were right for you. It just means you're human. It means your heart was invested. But love without peace, love without consistency, love without growth, that's not love that lasts. That's love that drains. So in this space of no contact, ask yourself, what am I building? Because if you're simply counting the days until you hear from them, you're not building, you're just waiting. But if you're using this time to rediscover who you are, to pour into friendships, passions, your physical and emotional health, then you're doing the most powerful thing you can do. You're becoming someone you're proud of again. You're becoming someone that doesn't need validation to feel whole. And that's attractive, not just to others, but to yourself. Because true confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It's quiet, calm, grounded. It's knowing you can walk away from anything that no longer honors you and not crumble. That kind of strength doesn't come from texting them back or hoping for closure. It comes from silence, from restraint, from choosing yourself, even when it hurts. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about proving to yourself that you matter more, that your emotional well-being isn't up for negotiation, that your standards don't disappear just because you miss someone. And when you realize that, when you truly live that, you'll start to feel your power return. Not all at once, not in some cinematic aha moment, but slowly, subtly, in the way you sleep better, the way you walk with more certainty, the way you stop obsessing over what they're doing and start getting excited about what you're creating. So no, you're not waiting. You're not just enduring silence, crossing your fingers for a text. You're rebuilding your power, piece by piece, choice by choice, moment by moment. Every day you don't reach out, every moment you resist the urge to break that boundary, you're winning. Not the breakup, not the relationship, you're winning yourself back. And that's the most valuable thing you can ever reclaim. Choose your power over your impulse. That urge to reach out, it's real, it's powerful, and it often shows up when you least expect it. Maybe it's triggered by a song, a photo, or just an ordinary moment that suddenly feels empty without them. In those moments, your mind starts playing tricks. It tells you just one message won't hurt. It whispers, maybe they're waiting for you too. And before you know it, your fingers are hovering over your phone, ready to type something, anything, that brings you closer to them again. But here's what you need to understand. Craving contact doesn't mean you're supposed to act on it. In fact, the craving is part of the detox. It's like trying to quit sugar. Your body will scream for it, but that doesn't mean sugar is what's good for you. That emotional craving is your heart searching for comfort in a place that once felt safe, even if it wasn't. The danger is that you start mistaking temporary relief for long-term healing. Every time you reach out in that moment of weakness, you send yourself a subtle message. I need their attention to feel okay. You reinforce the belief that their response, or lack of it, has power over your worth. And the problem is, even if they reply, even if they give you the hit of dopamine you're looking for, you'll still be left empty because nothing fundamental has changed. You're still dependent on the interaction to feel whole. That's not love. That's emotional hunger. And I know it feels like silence is unbearable. It's so tempting to break it, just to know you're still on their radar. But here's the shift. What if you saw that silence not as rejection, but as a space for you to finally breathe again? What if instead of filling it with noise, you allowed it to teach you something about your own emotional patterns? Because the truth is, the longer you sit with that urge and don't act on it, the stronger you become. You're rewiring your brain every time you resist the impulse. You're telling yourself, I can feel this longing and still choose myself. That's power, that's control. And it's something most people never give themselves the chance to experience because they're too busy trying to escape discomfort instead of learning from it. Think of it like this. Each time you don't send that text, you're building emotional muscle. You're learning how to sit in the uncomfortable space between what you feel and how you choose to respond. And that space is where real strength is born. It's where confidence begins. Not the performative kind, but the kind rooted in true self-respect. The moment you give in and break no contact, you lose a little piece of that power. You trade long-term clarity for short-term comfort. And sometimes the other person doesn't even respond the way you hoped. Sometimes they're distant, cold, or worse, polite but detached. And then you're left not only with disappointment, but with the shame of knowing you went against your own decision to walk away. That's the cycle we have to break. Because the longer you stay stuck in it, the more you train your heart to rely on someone else to regulate your emotions. You teach yourself that your value is determined by how often someone chooses you. But the truth is, your value is constant, whether someone sees it or not. It's not up for negotiation. So the next time that wave of emotion crashes over you and you feel desperate to reach out, I want you to pause. Don't distract yourself. Don't numb it. Just sit with it. Let the discomfort rise. Let it shake you a little. And then remind yourself, this is the exact moment where growth happens. Not when you feel strong, but when you feel weak and still choose not to run back. This is your training ground. These moments are what separate people who move on with grace from those who get stuck in cycles for years. Every time you choose silence, you're not punishing them, you're protecting your peace. You're not being cold, you're being courageous. Because walking away, it takes more strength to say nothing than it ever takes to send a message. And maybe they are thinking about you, maybe they do miss you, but none of that matters if what you had wasn't right. You don't want someone who only remembers your worth in your absence. You want someone who honors your presence while you're still there. And if they couldn't do that, then reaching out now is just giving them access to you without accountability. You're not here to prove your love. You've already done that. This isn't about whether you cared. It's about whether they showed up in a way that deserved your care. So feel the craving. Let it come, but don't feed it. Don't give it the control it doesn't deserve. Because every time you choose not to reach out, you're not just staying silent, you're telling the world, and more importantly yourself, that you're enough without their validation. And that truth will carry you further than any reply ever could. You know, one of the biggest traps people fall into during no contact is this tendency to look back with rose-tinted glasses. We start remembering all the laughs, the little moments, the feeling of being wanted, of being seen. And it's easy to get lost in that. It's easy to make those memories feel like the whole truth. But the danger in that is we begin to romanticize something that may not have actually been right for us. And when you romanticize the past, you start convincing yourself that what you lost was irreplaceable, that you won't feel that way again, that somehow that connection was the peak. And once you start believing that story, it becomes really difficult to stay strong. Here's the truth though, it wasn't the peak, it was just familiar. And familiarity, especially when it's tied to strong emotion, can feel a lot like significance. But they're not the same. Just because something felt big doesn't mean it was good for you. What we often miss is that what we were clinging to wasn't necessarily the person. It was the idea of what we thought it could be. We get hooked on the potential, on the fantasy version of what might have happened if things had just gone differently. And so we grieve not just the relationship, but this imagined future we built with them. But here's where the shift needs to happen. Instead of using all that energy to replay the past and ask yourself, what if? I want you to start asking, what now? What does my life look like now that I've been given this space? What kind of person do I want to be from here? Because here's something powerful. The future you're walking toward is far more important than the one you didn't get to live out with them. The reality is, we don't get to grow by clinging to something that no longer fits us. And if someone walked away or if it fell apart, that's your signal. It's not the end of the story, it's a plot twist. And sometimes the plot twist is what finally leads you to something deeper, something healthier, something more aligned with who you really are. But you don't find that by constantly looking back. You need to start romanticizing your future instead. Picture that, not the old texts, not the nights you stayed up thinking about them, but the you that is just starting to come alive again, the you that's learning to set boundaries, the you that's rediscovering what makes you passionate, what makes you laugh, what makes you feel powerful. That version of you, that's magnetic. That's the person who will attract someone who truly sees you, not just for your presence, but for your standards, your value, your direction. And I want you to understand this. Emotional strength isn't about feeling nothing. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let the pain write your story. Every time you resist the urge to go back, you're not just maintaining no contact, you're building the path to the life you actually want. That's where your real strength lies. When you start shifting your focus from I miss them to I miss the way I felt when I believed I mattered, you begin to understand the difference between missing a person and missing the feeling of being loved. And when you can give that love back to yourself, when you can be the source of your own significance. You stopped chasing someone who couldn't hold it for you. So let them stay in the past. That chapter is over. Not because it wasn't real, but because you're growing into someone who needs more than real. You need right. You need consistent. You need someone who meets you where you are without needing to be reminded of your worth. And maybe that person still exists out there, but if they do, they'll meet the version of you that didn't wait around hoping to be noticed. They'll meet the version of you who decided to move forward with clarity, not fear. The pain of letting go will always pale in comparison to the regret of staying stuck. You don't need to romanticize the past to feel whole. The most romantic thing you can do right now is to believe in your future enough to stop settling for someone who isn't in it. And when you do that, when you finally make peace with what was, you open yourself up to what could be. Just because they're silent doesn't mean they've moved on or forgotten you. But here's the thing you need to understand. The silence can be deafening when you're craving closure, answers, or connection. And in that silence, your mind becomes a dangerous place. You start filling in the blanks. Maybe they've met someone else. Maybe they never cared. Maybe I made a mistake by walking away. It's in those quiet moments, especially late at night when your defenses are down, that you begin to question everything. The silence starts to speak louder than the words ever did. But the truth is, their silence doesn't carry meaning unless you assign it meaning. Just because someone isn't saying anything doesn't mean they're over it or that you weren't important to them. People go quiet for all kinds of reasons: confusion, pride, fear, avoidance. But none of those are your responsibility. Here's what I want you to do instead of obsessing over their silence. Shift the focus back to you. What are you doing with your silence? What are you building during this pause? Because no contact isn't about what they're thinking or doing. It's about what you're thinking and what you're becoming. So many people use no contact as a tactic. If I don't text them, maybe they'll miss me. That's not the point. The goal isn't to manipulate someone into coming back. The goal is to create space for clarity, both for them and for you. And that's hard because clarity doesn't always come quickly. It comes in layers. One week you miss the laughs. The next, you remember the way they dismissed your feelings. One day, you long for their touch. The next, you recall the emptiness you felt even when they were lying next to you. But it's in the silence that your real truth starts to emerge. Not the fantasy version you clung to, but the raw, unfiltered truth about how that relationship made you feel, how it affected your self-worth, and what you truly want moving forward. And here's a powerful realization. You don't need their words to understand your worth. You don't need their validation to know whether you did the right thing. And you don't need them to come back for closure. Sometimes the closure is in the fact that they didn't fight for you. Sometimes the closure is in your own decision to stop accepting crumbs when you deserved the whole damn cake. The silence can be painful, but it can also be peaceful. When you stop chasing, you stop bleeding. When you stop reaching out for someone who doesn't reach back, you begin the slow but powerful process of recentering yourself. You learn how to enjoy your own company again. You rediscover the version of yourself that doesn't need external reassurance to feel enough. This is the stage where you begin to ask better questions. Not, do they miss me? But do I actually miss them, or just the idea of them? Not, will they come back? But would I even want them back if I loved myself the way I should? These are hard questions, but they're the ones that move you forward. Let's be honest. Sometimes we're not really missing them. We're missing who we were when we were with them. We're missing the feeling of being chosen, the feeling of mattering to someone. But if being chosen meant abandoning your boundaries, losing sleep over mixed signals, or constantly wondering where you stood, was it really a gift? Or was it a trade-off you made in the hope that one day they'd finally meet you halfway? This silence, this no contact period, it's your mirror. It reflects not who they are, but who you've been and who you can become if you stop chasing people who can't meet you at your level. It gives you the space to raise your standards, to reconnect with your core values, and to remember that love isn't meant to feel like emotional gymnastics. And if they do come back one day, that's not the real test. The real test is, who are you by then? Will you still be the person hoping for a sign? Or will you be the person who now knows they don't need one? So no, their silence doesn't mean they've moved on. But more importantly, it doesn't matter, because your growth isn't dependent on their attention, your healing isn't dictated by their actions, and your peace, that belongs entirely to you now. Hold the silence and let it shape you. You know, when we go through a breakup or even just distance ourselves from someone who's wrong for us, there's this heavy silence that follows. And that silence feels like a void. It's this empty space where texts used to arrive, where our minds used to obsess, where we'd replay conversations, wonder what they're thinking, check our phones and hope. And that silence can feel suffocating. And the mistake so many people make in no contact is that they try to just endure it. They try to just get through it like they're holding their breath until the pain passes. But here's the truth that most people don't realize. That void isn't just an empty space. It's an opportunity. And what you put in that space makes all the difference. If you fill the void with pain by endlessly scrolling through their old messages, stalking their social media, replaying every memory, and wondering what went wrong, you'll feed the very emotions that are trying to keep you small, trying to convince you that you lost something irreplaceable. But if instead you make the choice, the conscious, powerful choice to fill that void with purpose, everything begins to shift. Now, I'm not saying that purpose is some magical pill that makes you forget them overnight. Of course not. You're human. You invested your time, your heart, your energy into this person, and the bond you felt doesn't just disappear because they did, but purpose gives you something bigger to reach for. It's like lighting a candle in the dark. You might still feel the ache, but at least now you can see where you're going. Purpose isn't always some grand life mission either. Sometimes it starts small. It starts with waking up and deciding to take care of yourself again. It starts with going for that walk instead of lying in bed thinking about what they're doing. It starts with picking up that book you've always wanted to read, signing up for that class you kept putting off, or spending time with people who remind you of who you are when you're not constantly questioning your worth. And as you start doing these things, something incredible begins to happen. That pain that once felt so overwhelming, it starts to soften, it starts to lose its grip. Because now your brain is no longer being fed by obsession, it's being fed by intention. You start feeling proud of yourself again. You feel like you're showing up for you in a way that maybe you haven't in a long time. And that builds a deeper kind of confidence, not the kind that says, I hope they see what they lost, but the kind that says, I didn't lose anything. I just made space for something better. We have this idea that closure comes from someone else giving us answers, or apologizing, or returning to explain their actions. But real closure often comes when we stop making someone else the center of our story and finally make ourselves the main character again. That's what filling the void with purpose really means. It's saying, this chapter might be painful, but it's not pointless. You get to decide what comes next. You get to decide whether this season becomes a breakdown or a breakthrough. Some days will feel harder than others. There will be moments where the loneliness creeps back in, where the temptation to reach out feels overwhelming. In those moments, ask yourself, if I reach out now, am I honoring the version of me I'm becoming, or am I just feeding the part of me that's scared to grow alone? Because the truth is, this solitude, this silence, it isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's making room for the next level of your life. But you can't level up if you're still using your energy to chase someone who is meeting you there. You don't need to just survive no contact. You can thrive in it. You can let this time be the fuel that reignites your passions, your self-belief, your vision for your future. You can come out the other side of this not weaker, but wiser, not more closed off, but more clear. And the next time someone comes into your life, you'll be able to love without losing yourself, because you'll know what it feels like to stand strong in your own space, to fill the void, not with pain, but with purpose. That's how you turn no contact from something that breaks you into something that builds you. No contact gives you something most people are terrified of: clarity, not just about the other person, but about yourself. And here's the part that people often don't realize until much later. Clarity doesn't always come in loud, dramatic moments. It comes in silence, in stillness, in the space between one text and the next, in the distance between who you were with them and who you're becoming without them. When you cut contact, you're not just removing their voice from your life. You're giving yourself the chance to hear your own voice again. And maybe for the first time in a while, you can ask yourself real questions. What do I truly want in a relationship? Was I showing up as the best version of myself? Or was I always chasing approval, affection, or crumbs of attention? Those answers don't come when you're constantly checking your phone or waiting for their name to pop up. They come when you step away long enough to breathe, to feel, to reflect. Clarity reveals the gaps we were trying to ignore. It's what shows us when someone's presence was more of a pattern than a partnership. But here's the beautiful part. The further you get into no contact, the less you see them through the lens of emotion, and the more you see them through the lens of truth. Not the fantasy version you clung to at night, but the reality of how they made you feel in the daylight. How consistent they were, how safe, how seen you felt or didn't feel. That's what distance gives you. It breaks the emotional fog. In the beginning, the silence feels unbearable. You want to fill it with something, anything, an "I miss you" text, a random meme you could use as an excuse, or even a quick scroll through their social media just to feel connected. But every time you resist that impulse, you're doing something profound. You're creating space. And in that space, you start to come back to life. You start to see that maybe the attention you were craving wasn't love, it was validation. Maybe the chemistry wasn't connection, it was just chaos you got used to. So when that urge comes, because it will, you remind yourself, I'm not doing no contact to get a reaction. I'm doing it to get my power back. You're not pressing pause on life, hoping they'll wake up and chase you. You're pressing play on your life again. You're choosing to no longer invest in uncertainty. You're choosing to let go of the illusion that one more conversation will fix everything. Because if someone wanted to give you clarity, they would. If someone wanted to fight for you, you'd know. And that clarity, it's not cold or cruel, it's kind, because it frees you. It frees you from the narrative that their presence defines your worth, that their silence means you have to scream to be seen. You don't. You never did. This space you're creating, it's where your standards live. It's where your peace grows. And it's where your self-respect comes home again. When someone doesn't reach out, it's not a sign that you're not lovable. It's a sign that maybe, just maybe, they weren't capable of loving you the way you need. And that's okay. Not everyone will be able to meet you there. But the right person, the one who's emotionally available, who respects your heart, who matches your effort, they won't need to lose you to realize your value. So for now, stay in the silence, not as punishment, not as strategy, but as a gift to yourself. Every day you don't reach out, you're telling yourself, I deserve clarity. I deserve consistency. I deserve love that doesn't make me question myself. And that, more than any message they could ever send, is the loudest, clearest truth you need. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to walk away with your dignity intact,